Welcome to the Create Today podcast. This show is all about how you can create the life that you want one day at a time. I'm your host, Karen Stanley, and my beautiful guest is Dr. Linda Marquez-Goodine. She's an author, speaker, doctor of chiropractic medicine, certified functional medicine practitioner, and health and wellness coach. She's amazing. Thank you so much, Linda, for being here. I really appreciate it. We're going to learn a lot today.
I'm excited. Anything when it comes to health and women and making women just a better version of themselves, that's like exciting. We have this unlimited power within us. And if we just knew how powerful we are, women would be unstoppable. So I think it's awesome that, that your platform is really going to help a lot of women too. So that's awesome. I'm so grateful for being here.
Me too. Thank you. I think when it comes to our health, we are very unique creatures as women. And I think a lot of people are not really connected to what even like where they are in their cycle and how that could affect all of these different things, your sleep, your mood, your decisions, your irritability. And I really want to teach people, have you teach us, tell us what's going on in each stage of our cycle at each decade, each stage of life as well. Mm-hmm. And how can we optimize how we feel? And so why don't we just start there? When you're in your 20s and what's going on in your 20s? And then at that stage in life, how can we help each other? How can we help ourselves feel good at this different stages of our cycle?
So let's start with what's a hormone, because there's a lot of different hormones. So a hormone is a chemical messenger that tells the body what to do. It has a specific purpose. So I always say hormones are the language of communication. So when it comes to like women, we always think, okay, testosterone, or definitely testosterone, but estrogen and progesterone are the two major female hormones, but we also have a lot of testosterone. And there's two other hormones that really impact how your sex hormones work, and that's going to be insulin and cortisol. Okay, those are super important along with thyroid. So I like to give them names. So I tell my ladies, you got Queen Esther. She's your estrogen that gives you the nice, you get the nice shape, you get the beautiful skin, get lubrication. And then you have progesterone, and she kind of balances out estrogen. She's like her pal and calms her down towards the end of her cycle. And then you have testosterone that kind of gives us that boost, that motivation. And testosterone for women comes in at different times of the month. So those are the three hormones that I say are super important. However, you have two other hormones, insulin and cortisol. Those, like insulin, most people figure like, oh, that's the sugar hormone, meaning it impacts how your body utilizes glucose, sugar. Mm-hmm. And then you have cortisol, which most people call it the stress hormone, that when your body is in fight or flight, there's a situation we got to deal with. It's like, whoop, cortisol goes up. So those are some of the major ones. And then we have the thyroid hormone, which is right here. Every single cell in your body has a receptor site that for the thyroid. So that impacts pretty much everything. And the thyroid is more like the CEO. It controls the rate. It's like the leader of the pack that's like, I'm going to go fast or I'm going to go slow, and y'all are going to have to do what I do. So it's super important. So when a gal is in her 20s, so let's just start when they have their first period. Nowadays, we're having a lot of gals having their period like at 9-10 years old, which is crazy. And if we look at history, the Sweet 16 was considered like, hey, she's becoming a young lady because she's starting her period. But nowadays, look how young the females are. They're having periods, like I said, at 9 and 10 years old. I was just at a talk last week talking to girls in 8th grade going into high school and trying to teach them about some of the information that we're going to talk about today to empower them so that their period is not something that they look like it's a horrible thing. And as I was kind of surveying the room, I'm like, okay, how many of you started your period like at at 12, 13, and most of the hands were already up. And then I'm like, okay, who started at 11? I had hands go up. Who started at 10? And, there were still some hands up. And then there was like a few hands with 9 at 9 years old. So it's crazy. And then they don't talk about it. So women, we got to teach them when they're young. So my purpose was to teach them. So I say, this is what happens to your body. I break them up in phases. A cycle is pretty much, it's every 28 days, sometimes 32 days. Your first day of bleed is considered, your menstrual cycle. If you look at it from a textbook view, you've got 2 phases. It's called follicular phase and luteal phase, and they're split like in the first half and the second half. The first 14 days are follicular. The last 14 days, even up to 15, 16 days is considered your luteal phase. One is progesterone dominant, one is estrogen dominant. So the way I like to break it down is kind of on a weekly, like on 4 weeks. What's happening to your body? Okay, day 1 through 7. Well, the first day is your day of bleed. Okay, usually it's 5 days for most gals, 3 and then 2 kind of that aren't not a lot of bleed. And then, by 7th day, most of them are done. If they're not done, I always say, we've got some issues with your body and estrogen, and we got to work on that. Those are usually gals that are eating a lot of processed foods. I mean, we have a lot of young kids eating a lot of processed food, fast food. I always say fast food, fast death. So typically, most of the hormones are low. And what's happening during that bleeds phase, it's just the shedding. It's the shedding of the lining, the uterus lining. So if women would just look at it as kind of a detox phase, it would change their perspective. But I break it down into 4 phases. I call it the pre-party phase, which would be like, okay, it's the bleed phase. I have the party phase, which is like everything's like just rocking. The hormones are all having fun. There's the queen bee, she's ready to go. And then I have the after party phase that there's a little, there's still a little bit there. And then you have the recovery phase, like, okay, party's over and my body needs a break. So if you break it down in kind of those phases, it's really neat to see like, oh, this is what I should be doing. So let's look at the first week. It's like the pre-party phase, okay? There's bleed. Usually the first days, most women are like, they don't feel too great. So by the 2nd, 3rd day, they're feeling a little bit better. They're building up estrogen all the way to the end of that first week, up to 7 days. So usually by 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th day, they start getting a little bit, kind of a little bit more chatty, and they feel a little bit better. During this time as well, I always say your body becomes insulin resistant. So decreasing your carb intake would be much better. This is the phase that pre-party phase is just like, okay, I'm getting ready for this big party. I'm going to work out. I'm going to do a lot of cardio, which is very, very effective in those first 7 days. But most of like I said, most of the time that first week, first day, a lot of women don't want to work out. They're kind of like at that. But if they do that and they restrict their carbs, they do a little bit of fasting, no matter whether a woman's in her 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, they do really well at this time. So that is really good because all the hormones are low. You're just starting to build up estrogen. Okay, so I call that the pre-party phase. And you kind of extend that a little bit into, you start getting into the preparation, or that's a pre-party phase. Then you kind of get into that party phase. That party phase is more like day 10 through like 12, 13, 14. Okay. You can even extend that pre-party phase, that first week and a half, to like day 10. So day 10, 11, all the way to like day 14, it's like, boy, things are really revving up. I would say she's looking pretty, estrogen's starting to go up. You get into a phase where it peaks, and it's like at day 14. So now you're really in that party phase where estrogen goes up, testosterone goes up, and you get a little bit of a progesterone in there to trying to calm down that estrogen, because I call estrogen Queen Esther. She's like the queen bee. And Queen Esther is at her peak. She is lovable no matter what happens, like everybody loves her. She's very chatty. She's given off this smell. They're called, you have the hormones give off a smell. Everybody loves her. The women just want to be around her because both sides of her brain are just talking. She's just bam, bam, bam. She's on spot. She's sharp. She's like, has the answers to everything. She's rocking her workouts because testosterone is going in there and she's feeling very powerful. So this is like the best phase for women. She's very attractive. That's why it's the time that she can get pregnant, the most likely time, during that time. It's like she's irresistible and she's feeling powerful. So all the men want her and all the girls want to be like her. So that's kind of what's happening. That's one of the most powerful phases. And if women and young girls would just understand, like, that is like, I'm going to go all out, try new projects. My brain is just lit up. I'm good to go. This is the time where, of course, you don't want to do a whole lot of fasting during this time. You want to make sure that you're getting your protein, some healthy carbs in there. You don't want to do like bulk exercises, like super intense, like you're just boom, taking off. Because there's a propensity for injury because estrogen is going up. So everything becomes a little loosey-goosey. So a lot of women because they feel powerful and unstoppable, but that's like, no, you want to do not explosive movements, but really just focus on slow and strength. And then you get into kind of like that after party phase. And that after party phase can be like days 15 through about 18, 19. And there's still a little bit like, oh, party's over, but I still got a little bit of get up and go. You kind of can do the same thing during that phase and do a little bit of more like interval training. Your body will respond really well. Estrogen is not as high as it was. It's kind of like that after party. So a lot of the things what you were able to do in that first week of the cycle, you can do during that phase. Then after that is the recovery phase. I call it that whole last week before she parties, before she starts again. If the egg was not fertilized, then that's when the body starts to prepare for that uterine shedding. So that last week, right before the cycle, it's a good time for women that they just relax. It's more chillax. I'm not saying don't work out. You just don't want to work out at that high intensity. It's not a good time to go and try to start a new workout and like say, hey, I want to start working out with you, Karen. It's like, I want to do your workout. It's like the wrong time because the connection for the brain is not as optimal like as a mid-cycle. Okay. So it's kind of a good time where estrogen is starting to calm down. Progesterone should be coming up to put you in that chill, calm down, relax phase. During that week, you want to have a little bit more carbs. You don't want to fast because you need carbs for healthy progesterone. For those healthy progesterone levels. So a lot of more like relaxation, looking within. This is a good time to kind of do some self-reflection. A lot of gals just like to read a book, Netflix. It's not a good time to go party, not a good time to ask for anything because your vibe is a little bit lower because of hormones. And then you start the cycle over again. Now, a lot of women have PMS. And it's really bad. Now it's PMMD, which is PMS on steroids, And I'm like, if you can fix your cycle so easy. If you stop trying dieting, which a lot of them, like they try dieting because they're going to gain a little bit of weight. You become more inflammatory. So you're going to gain a little bit of weight during that. And it's okay. It's just water weight. You're going to release it once you hit that cycle. Once you start that bleed again, think of it like a detox. So you'll gain a little weight, but it's just water weight and you will release it.
Why do we gain water weight the week before we start again?
Because of the progesterone. Progesterone, you want to have healthy progesterone levels to kind of it's the calm one, but we also need more carbohydrates during that time. And when we have a little bit more carbs, you are going to hold on to some water, but you're going to be able to release it as well. So it's really, and most women, they're more stressed during that week before their cycle too. So then you got cortisol that goes up as well. And so cortisol, I call it one of the belly fat bullies, that if cortisol and insulin go up, guess what? You're going to hold on to fat.
Mm,
So we become sometimes even more stressed during that time. So if
mm,
you kind of look at those phases, if you have a gal that's in her 20s, her hormones are awesome. It's like she peaks right around at 25 and things start to kind of change a little bit. They can get away with a whole lot more than when you're in your 30s and in your 40s. So I say, you know, it's really easy to sculpt your body with cardio and, some weight training. Your body's just super receptive. So a woman in her 20s, I'm like, it's just like, okay, you're focusing on diet and you're and shaping your body. Hit a lot of cardio that first week, hit the heavier weights at mid-cycle, that second week. Third week, you can still do a little bit more cardio combined. You can do weight training. The last week, kind of focus on lighter weight. I like to do more like the 100 rep deal, lighter weight, more the Pilates, the stretching, a lot of meditation, and then you kind of restart that balance in your 20s. So most women in their 20s, they're just trying to get their career going. Maybe they're finishing school, they're having fun, they're looking for their mate. So it's like work with that. Now,
mm.
what happens is now you enter that third decade of life. Now, a woman in her 30s, the hormones are going to shift just a little bit. Okay. They're going to be less. This is a time where it's like women are like, it'd be nice to get married, nice to have a baby. I'm kind of getting settled into my career. I'm starting to really, I have an idea what I want to do, and I'm doing pretty good. I think I can balance all this. So, typically the woman in her 30s can still kind of follow what a woman in her 20s is doing, but they have to be a little bit more intentional with the first half of the cycle when they're on their bleed, and making sure that they are doing days of interval training, cardio. Fasting works amazing during that time. You don't want to fast. You don't want to do intermittent fasting in the middle of the cycle, because if you're trying to get pregnant, that's the worst thing you want to do. Or you don't want to do intermittent fasting during the week before your cycle, because you do need more carbohydrates to feel better. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And so I tell women, I'm like, so you want to get pregnant. I'm like, we're really going to focus on mid-cycle and like the second week, second, third, and fourth week, the latter half of your cycle. If we really want to focus on getting pregnant, we teach them like, okay, mid-cycle, have a little bit more carbs during that party phase, making sure you're getting healthy fats, making sure that you have good liver foods and bitter foods, like your cruciferous vegetables, to do some mild detox and cleansing. But that last week, progesterone, like say the egg got fertilized. Well, you have to have a nice, reception for that egg. And a lot of women lose their baby because they don't have, healthy progesterone levels too. So that's why having those carbs for some people, it's a comfort food as well. I encourage them to do a little bit more carbs. That they don't have to like go crazy and do 300 carbs. I'm like, you can do between 100 and 200. You can do it every other day of the week before your cycle. So if we're really trying to get pregnant, that's what I have them focus on. They still like, but I still want to have a nice body. I'm like, okay, then let's rev up the cardio that first half, that first 7-8 days. Okay. So that's kind of what a 30-year-old looks like. She's usually feeling pretty good. Most 30-year-olds, well, let's go back to 20s. Most gals in their 20s, what they deal with a lot of is like PCOS. They have a lot of acne. The reason that they deal with that is like they have elevated androgens, which is like their testosterone levels. And you'll see that because the body doesn't lie. It's always telling you something. So when I see a young gal's skin and I'm like, okay, she's probably has elevated estrogen or testosterone. Her liver's probably not detoxing properly. And I said, her gut's probably not working. So most of the time when I see a young gal in her 20s, even like these teenagers, their hormones are doing this and they're just trying to get on a regular cycle.
Mhm.
My first guess is, they might have some insulin resistance, meaning their body's not using sugar properly, and they probably have elevated testosterone. It's missed a lot because a lot of doctors will not check they won't check young gals, their hormones. They just don't do it. It's
Mm.
just something that medical, I don't understand the whole reasoning behind it, but I think one of the reasons also of talking to some colleagues is the solution would just to get them on birth control pills to normalize their hormones,
God.
which I called ovarian castration. You know, it's just like, you don't want to do that. Because I've had young gals come in, and now they're in their 30s and they're trying to get pregnant, and they've been on birth control pills for half their life. It's
Oh my God.
crazy. And it'll take like sometimes 1 to 2 years to normalize get their cycle normal. But because of working with so many women now, it's just like I kind of found a shortcut. And I'm like, okay, if you do this, this, and this, and just be consistent to this for at least 2 months, we sometimes even shorten that time within like 3 to 4 months, or back on their cycle. It's beautiful what the body does. But we really have to get the fasting in, the exercise, the mind training. It's a multifactorial approach. So it's quite interesting what happens with a lot of young gals in their 20s, and they get really frustrated with that.
Yeah.
Something that's often missed in their 20s too is their thyroid. A lot of young gals have the Hashimoto's, and they're like, I'm doing all this. You would think, I'm young, I'm working out, and I'm like, and so I'll have to check thyroid, and sometimes the thyroid slows down because of the cortisol. Remember, we talked about cortisol, how that's the stress hormone, which also interferes with how your thyroid works, but it also interferes how estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone work. So you see.
I have a side question. Yeah, I'm loving this. Thank you. What are the signs, or what could be the cause if a young gal doesn't have regular periods after they've had their period for like a year or two, and it's still sporadic every other month or every 3 months? What could be the cause of that?
Well, I always go back and say there's usually one cause, okay? Stress. But stress it's different. There's physical stress, meaning they're maybe working out too much and they're not recovering. Maybe they have an injury. Okay, maybe they're at work sitting all the time. So there's a physical stress. There's a chemical stress. Chemical stress is all these xenoestrogens. What are they putting on their hair? What are they putting on their skin? You go into some of these young kids and they have all these plugins with all these fragrances. They're toxic. They're carrying around their plastic bottles that have been sitting in the cars. So you're getting these xenoestrogens. Okay, so you look at that stress as well. What about the food that they're eating? A lot of these fast food places, their food is like the worst of the worst. They're there to make a profit. So you're getting all those hormones, you're getting antibiotics from those. So that's also a chemical type of stress. And then you have the emotional type of stress. So women that are in school, it's like they have this stress of they want to do well in college. Their parents are paying for college. Some of them are like, I don't know what I want to do. And so that's like a stress for them as well. Then you have that emotional stress. That stress will interfere with how your hormones are working at any age. So that is a big thing. And I think we have more stress now with these kids with FOMO and, and the comparison with social media. That's very, very huge as well.
So when the cortisol goes up, do the other ones come down? The other hormones come down?
It interferes with the expression of the other hormones.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So what are the differences for 40s? Let's go to my category. I'm almost in the 50s category.
Okay.
So
I say the 40s.
Yeah, what is happening?
People don't want to hear the 40s, but I'm just like the 40s.
I'm sorry. The 40s
is like
best 10 years of my life. Like it's been the best decade of my life. So anybody who's afraid of 40, forget about it. It's awesome.
So the 40s is kind of that, it could be the best and it could be the worst time of your life. A lot of times I see women in their later 40s, some even in their early 40s, depending how they manage stress, your hormones are starting to change. You're starting to get, we even see some women with premature ovarian failure. It's just like things are starting to shut down. They're not ovulating. If they're not ovulating, then that means progesterone, you're getting very low progesterone. Progesterone is that calming kind of makes you feel good type of hormone, which we get towards that end of that very last part of the cycle.
Sorry to interrupt, but how would you know, how would a normal person know if they're not ovulating?
Testing.
Okay.
Yeah, testing.
Oh.
And some women, because there's some women that are still trying to get pregnant in their 40s. And I'm like, well, you have to do, hormone testing to see where you are. There's these ovulatory kits as well that you can buy over the counter and test as well. So you'll know if you're, if you're ovulating, and a lot of times, they won't hold on to a baby because their progesterone gets lower at that time, which could be due to stress. So it's nice to know what the hormone levels are, what's going on in their 40s. So what happens also in the 40s, there's a lot of changes that start to happen. And the biggest one I say is cortisol, the whole stress. A woman's in her 40s. And if she started having babies in her 20s, now she's at the point where, okay, I'm in my 40s and my kids are going off to school. They don't really need me anymore. They're leaving the house. It's almost like things are changing. And it's like, what's my purpose in life?
It's so sad. That's you're describing me right now. I don't want to cry.
Even though it's just like, I'm rocking it, and, my marriage is good. I'm rocking it there. I'm doing great at work. I'm doing really well. And the hormones have a slow decline. They kind of start, and then boom, they drop. Right. The 40s is the most important time of a woman's life that they take care of themselves, because what they do in their 40s is going to impact them tremendously when menopause. When you have the hormones, or those where it's boom, you're done, and it's like 12 months, no period, there's a huge shift for women. What I see a lot of the times with women in their 40s is, depending on their levels of stress, we see that they're having a lot of challenges, and it's just like they have no idea what's going on. They're usually gaining a lot of weight. They gain weight and they're like, I'm working out like I was in my 20s and 30s, and the weight is just coming on. I'm like, well, that's hormonal. As you remember, hormones are chemical messengers that, that turn on different systems to tell them what to do. It's the language of communication in the body. It's not the calories in, calories out that's going to determine how you sculpt your body. I said that's a hormonal aspect. So because of cortisol going up during that time, a lot of women don't manage stress really well in their 40s. And their hormones become a little bit unpredictable as well. It's like, there's like some months you feel really good, then other months you don't feel that great. Some months you feel really good, other months you don't. But this is what happens too. We start losing muscle mass. So we have to intentionally do resistance training, because when we lose muscle, and we start to lose our estrogen, we become more insulin resistant. So we have to be very intentional about our eating plan, our eating template. We could eat a lot of carbs when we were younger and we were more insulin sensitive. When we start getting in our 40s, as we start to lose estrogen, we also become more insulin resistant. And so you have to be very intentional, your meal timing, when you eat carbs, your workouts, how you work out, rest, and so forth. So in your 40s, if you start preparing that in your 40s and just be really intentional about, okay, my first half of my cycle, I'm going to do a little bit more fasting. I'm going to focus on protein. Then when I start getting in that second half of my cycle, I will still do my protein, but I'm still going to just do maybe a little bit more carbs every other day. That last week before my cycle, have a little bit of, a little bit more higher carbs. You're going to do up to 200 every other day, and then maybe 100 every other day that week before your cycle. When I'm talking about carbs, I'm talking more like fruits, like some of your citrus fruits. You can even do like bananas, you can do mango, your melons and so forth, papaya. So you can do those during that time. I'm not saying go out and eat donuts and all this bread and pasta and that, but more of nature's carbs, nature's candy. That's what I like to call that. Eat more of that. So that's what you really want to do in your 40s. Stress management is super important. And as I mentioned, resistance training is very, very important in your 40s, because as you prepare to that fifth decade, when you start losing your cycle, estrogen starts to go down, the queen starts to go down. So the change in skin, you see women, they're like a lot of, they age quicker. They have more wrinkles. Estrogen and progesterone really helped a lot with that. So when they get in their fifth decade of life, I'm like, whatever you did in your fourth decade of life is going to be a reflection of how you do in your fifth decade. Or I should say your fifth decade is a reflection of what you did in your 40s. So it's super important to get your 40s dialed in. As I mentioned, the hardest part, because I've seen, thousands of women, is I'm gaining weight and I've changed nothing. And I'm like, well, you're starting to get that little estrogen decline. And if you're stressing out and working out even more, like you were in your 20s and your 30s, and it's not working, you keep cutting your calories down. And that's like the worst thing that you can do, because then you start shutting down and down regulating that thyroid. Remember the thyroid, I would say she's kind of the CEO that sets the pace. And so when everything's slowing down, that includes your digestion, and you start getting a lot of bloating and digestive issues. So things start to slow down.
Okay, two questions. When you say the timing of your carbs, you don't mean the time of day, you mean the time in your cycle, right?
Both.
It's
So
both.
both, yeah.
When's the best time to eat carbs?
What's that?
So when's the best time to eat carbs? Like
So
during the day?
during the day, if you're going to pair it up with your workout, you want to do it like a post-workout. Okay, you can do it a post-workout, and it also depends on what your purpose is. So let's say you are going to have, you're going to do a workout and you're really focusing on power and strength. You could do like carbs before a workout, okay, because that's going to give you a little bit more oomph. If you're trying to do more fat burning, I usually have patients just try to do a fasted, they'll do a fasted workout. Their ability to push weight may be lost a little bit because you're not getting the carbs, so, but they still do they can be very effective with fat burning. Okay. You can also do post-workout carbs. Okay. You can do it in the evening, but cut off like at 6 o'clock. Cut it off when the sun sets. Because when the sun sets, we become more insulin resistant. So we have a tendency to hold on to fat when the sun sets, because we become more insulin resistant because melatonin is going up. So our body's ability to utilize that carbs, convert them into a form of sugar to use them as energy, decreases because we're not as active. Women tend to have a tendency of, and even just in general, the population, they've worked all day, they come home, either they order out or they make dinner. What do they usually do? They plop in front of the television and they sit there and they do nothing afterwards. That's like the worst thing. Is like, and sometimes that's the heaviest meal for many people. So I tell the patients, I'm like, no, you got to get out and go for like a 20-minute walk. Imagine there's little gates in your muscles that will open up. So what you just ate that gets converted into glucose, sugar, your muscles gobble them up to use as energy because you're going out and being active. You can even do like some push-ups, you can do half jacks, just to get your body moving. Otherwise, I say you're going to be able to store that more as fat because you're not utilizing it. So just something as simple as cutting off your meals by sunset and going for a walk after you, like a 20-minute walk after you eat, is major. It's huge.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
What are some natural ways that we can boost our testosterone without a supplement?
Exercise. Weight
Any kind of exercise?
Weight training. Yeah. And when we work out, women are so afraid they're afraid to work out and push heavy. I'm like, you're not going to get huge. I've been working out for years and I don't have huge muscles, you know. You have to be very, very intentional and know that if you're competing for a show, like some of these women that are competing at their show, they spend more than 1 hour in the gym. I can tell you that. Their protein intake is pretty high as well. So it's really difficult to do that. It's not so much how we can boost our testosterone levels that creates a problem with women. Like I said, during that mid-cycle, we get that higher testosterone levels. But if you have stress, that's going to interfere with how testosterone works in your body as well. So we always have to go back to, one, what is the cause? What's the cause? Why am I feeling this way? So I always tell patients, remember stress. Is this a physical stress? Was I in a car accident? You know, did I injure my leg? Workout? Am I recovering? Am I sleeping? I said, and go to the chemical stress. What are you eating? Go to the emotional stress, which is, you know, how people perceive stress. Because we really have a perceived stress. It's not really stress. The stress would be, there's a lion chasing me and I'm going to be his dinner. That's stress versus, oh, shoot, I forgot to call Karen. Oh my gosh. And, you know, or she didn't call me and she said she was going to call me. That's all perceived stress. That's like, you're not going to die. But we have this perceived stress that's so high. And I'm like, honey, that's not stress. I said, you're alive. You know, so those are some of the things that if we learn to manage that and we use exercise, that's really going to help a lot of women, you know.
So awesome. Thank you. This is so good. Do we need more sleep at certain stages of the cycle? Tell us about sleep and optimize our health with our sleep patterns. And do we need to change it up throughout the month?
Yes. So when it comes to sleep, women do need more sleep than men because our hormones are doing this. Think about a woman's body. It's pretty miraculous. It's like we housed a little alien in there for 9 months. It came out to be this beautiful human, you know, for 9 months. That's pretty miraculous.
Miracle.
Yes. We forget. And so women have to give themselves a little bit grace. You know, it's like, oh, I had a baby and this is, look at my body now. What a horrible thing to say because they're hearing that. They start to hear that. They cannot unhear what they've heard. It's in that little subconscious mind. And so a lot of women, you know, now they've grown up with that. And it's just like, oh, this is what's going to happen after having a baby. I'm going to gain weight, or I've gained this baby weight. And, you know, some women joke around that I've gone to like classes and they're like, oh, I'm doing this class because I'm holding on to baby weight. They're 50 some years old. And like, yeah, it's been about 20 years. And I'm thinking, I wouldn't want to say that to my child. It's just like, I'm fat because of you. No, it's like, no, because you probably have some hormonal issues that are off. And let's see what's causing those hormones to be off.
My baby, oh, really? How old's the baby? She's going to college.
Right? So I'm just like, oh my gosh, no, take responsibility. That is the biggest pill we need to swallow because it's so empowering when you take responsibility for your health and for your body. And if something's not working, you're losing your ability to respond, ask for help. That's what professionals are for. You know, you try to Google everything and, you know, it's just like, wow, that worked for that person, but maybe she was under the perfect conditions. She didn't have to work. She had a loving husband. She had great relationships. She eats clean. You know, she lives in a wonderful neighborhood. Everybody loves her.
And you don't know anything about that person, their biology, their habits, their lifestyle, anything.
Exactly. And so it really frustrates me when I see these guys that have, I'm not going to name any, but I'm just saying these influencers, hey, you can eat all this and look at me, I have a 6-pack, or even some young girls that are like, you know, trying to market to 30, 40-year-olds, you know, it's like, you have no idea. You have not gone through that phase yet. And then you have some women that are more mature and they're trying to teach. But once again, your body's chemistry lab is different than my body's chemistry lab. It's like a bank account. Some days it's like, baby, we're going to Nordstrom's. Other days it's like, honey, we got to go to Walmart.
Goodwill today. Sorry. Another question, sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say this completely unrealistic expectation that of young, when we're younger, especially, that sometimes doesn't go away. And women suffer and compare themselves their entire life and they're miserable no matter how good they look. Somebody told me who used to work with a lot of models, Victoria's Secret models, they said that they literally don't eat for a month before their runway show or any photo shoot. And they don't drink water for 24 hours before so that they can get the concave stomach.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that up because I want people to know that and hear that every single second for the rest of their life. Do not look at the magazines. It's all fake. And if it's their actual body, they're starving themselves and they're ruining their bodies forever.
Yes.
So maybe just speak to that, just the psychology between this unreasonable, unrational.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of it too. So having two daughters and I raised them. One, they do know a lot about health because that's all they've heard mommy, talk. I would take them to seminars with me. So they'd be my little assistants and they'd pass out the handout and they had to sit and listen to me, whether it was intentionally or not, it was going into their subconscious mind. They were learning some of this. So they've kind of been blessed to know some of this information. And as you say, a lot of it's propaganda. We are being controlled and manipulated by the media.
100%.
I'm a believer in that. And so I tell a lot of my patients, I'm going to ask you to do things that are to the contrary. A lot of it is those beliefs, it's just like, and we put these beliefs, which is a thought you keep thinking.
Yep.
So we have to change the thought. Because we don't know, like you said, you don't know. And I've seen a lot of gals' metabolisms hijacked because they're trying to be so thin, but nowadays we've taken it to the other extreme. It's just like, oh, it's okay to be big and beautiful. It's like, let's see what's going on in that chemistry lab of yours. Oh, everything's fine. I don't know. Most doctors don't run sufficient labs. I get that all the time. My doctor says everything's fine. I'm like, well, what labs did they run? And so there's a lot to dissect in that. And when you look at health, it's a huge puzzle. Okay. We've talked about, one, exercise, 2, sleep, 3, it's just like, what about your community? The people that you have cheering you on, that's important. You also have to look at the relationship you have with yourself. A lot of it comes down to most women don't feel that they're worthy enough. Yeah. It's a worth thing. And a lot of it, once again, it's in our subconscious mind from when we were little. So if you have grandma that says, oh, God, I just look at food and I gain weight. That's going into that little 5-year-old little female subconscious mind and thinks, oh, I better not eat because I'll gain weight, And it's like, a lot of that in everything that we think impacts our health. Absolutely everything. Because I always say your thoughts are powerful, but your words are spells. And then if you speak it out, you're just amplifying it. Your cells are always listening to what you're thinking and what you're saying. And if we get into the really woo-woo, which is not woo-woo, it's neuroscience, everything has a vibrational frequency. Okay. Every single cell in your body, and you can feel it around people. If you're ever around like an athlete, their vibrational energy is just electric. It's crazy. It's like, whew, I want to be around him and her all the time because they're just at a different level or they have trained their body and their mind to perform at a certain level. It's a frequency, and a frequency, all it is, every single frequency carries information out into the field, the world, every single frequency. So what frequency are you giving off at this time? you can be around people that you just want to hug them. They're like, I always say they got good juju, you know? And there's other people you're around and you're like, whoa, their frequency is like toxic because
Yeah.
they're giving out that information into I call the quantum field, which is the world, you know, it's in this field.
Yes.
And
And I
so,
want to get so far away from them. I want to run away.
yeah. But the beauty of it though, Karen, is when you start to becoming aware of your thoughts and how powerful they are and how you can use your thoughts to impact your body and the expression of the DNA, the genetic expression, it's so powerful. If you can make yourself sick with thought alone, just by anticipating, anticipating going in somewhere and giving your 2 weeks notice and you're getting all worked up and that's like a stressful situation for some people instead of being excited about something else. You see how that changes the way your genes are expressed. Most women, like there's a lot of women that get autoimmune conditions. And that happens because one, they have the stress of even their hormones changing and they don't know what to do. And so we see that very common in the 30s and 40s, and usually post baby after they've had a baby. That's why a lot of women go through that postpartum depression as well, because their hormones are off balance and nobody teaches them how should you be eating, you know, at this time after a baby. And you don't want to try to like lose all the baby fat at that time. It's just like, just let your body heal, nurse the baby, bond, get some oxytocin going, you know. I said, enjoy that time. So there's so much, and it needs to be very personalized for each lady that comes in.
Right.
You also have to impact the emotional. Your mind is just, it's so powerful. You know, we say this is like the Google of your of your brain. If you ask it, oh my gosh, why am I so fat? It's going to search and give you an answer why you are so fat. Why am I so amazing? It's going to search and it's going to give you an answer. Well, you're so amazing because of this. You know, why is it so easy for me to heal my body and get it back into shape? It's going to go and find an answer and give you that answer. So it's really about asking empowering questions.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm so glad you said all of that. I love that, how powerful it is and what questions are you asking yourself that in turn give you the answers that make you feel like shit.
Yeah.
You change the questions. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Love that. Before we wrap up, what are some other things that we can do to prepare our bodies, our minds, our souls, our hormones for menopause so that it can be easier and not a horrible time? Everybody I've known that have gone through it, they literally, all they do is talk about how horrible it is and how bad I feel and I'm just gaining weight and I can't do anything about it and it's the worst. Yeah. It can't be like that for everybody. It's not,
No.
it can't be that, it can't be a sentence for everybody, right? It has to be that way.
No, if you understand what you're seeing, a lot of women, because they didn't even know what their body was doing. They weren't aware. Mm-hmm. And even some of my colleagues that are gynecologists, they're like, they teach it now. And they're like, I wish I could have done this myself, but it didn't take until afterwards because the solution was always, they were taught, oh, just put them on hormones, but that's not enough. So the best thing is at any age is going back to the stress, going back to the physical stress. Am I sleeping enough? Am I working out according to my cycle? Am I, my resting? Am I getting up and walking around during, if I'm at work? What does my work environment look at? That's a whole physical component right there.
Okay.
The chemical component is, once again, what we talked about. What is the stuff? What is all the makeup? Are you putting Botox? Are you doing all all this other aesthetics that could be toxic for your body? The biggest one that a lot of people don't talk about is, breast plant illness. That's huge. And so that's like a stressor to the body. And it's like you have a ticking time bomb in there that could be going on for years and you don't even know it. That's something that's not talked about a whole lot, but because I've seen women in my practice that, that had breast plant illness, as soon as they were removed, it was like, it was like an almost instant thing that I felt that I had huge relief. And in some of them, I even heard that when they got it, like within like 24, 48 hours, like my body just felt off, like it was rejecting it. And then they
No,
started having all these health problems after that. So that's something that's often not spoken about as well. So the
I know,
physical, the chemical,
I know 3 people that have had them removed.
yeah.
And that's so many, and they have their own forums on Facebook, and because they have so many health problems from it. So that would be considered a chemical stress.
That's a chemical stressor on the body. Yeah, it's like that constant chemical stress. So think about, that, like I said, what about what we're cleaning our face with, our home with? There's an app that I use called Yucca, Yuka, and you can scan items at the store and it tells you whether they're great or not, what are the toxins in there. EWG.org as well is a great website, Skin Deep, to see what beauty products you're using and how they're impacting your skin. I try to keep it very to the minimal. So we look at that, your environment at home. Mold is another issue that we see as well with, a lot of people. So one, the physical, getting the sleep, the chemical, what they're putting in their body, what they're eating and so forth and drinking, and on their body and what's in their environment. Okay. Because remember, your skin is, it's transdermal, everything goes in there. And if you got bad skin, that's a reflection of your gut. And so just, you could tell when a person has a nice skin, it's just like, oh, they probably have a healthy gut. Like I said, it's a reflection. It's like turning the gut inside out. That's what the skin is a reflection of.
Oh, wow.
So, and then the other one I would say, is we break down the physical, chemical, and the emotional is, once again, it's not emotional. Women need to know, ask empowering questions. How can I be a better version of myself? How can I serve others? You and I are about serving with excellence. Do everything with excellence, but most of all, take care of you, invest in you to become a better version, to become a better human being, to serve others with integrity. And if you do that, that vibrational energy is going to come back to you in the form of people, and it's going to come back to you in the form of business. It's going to come back to you in the form of, a lot of different communities and so much. So it's really about looking at all that, and you get to evaluate, where am I? And what is my long-term plan of how do I want to impact over 100,000 women a year to empower them to become the CEO of their health. That is one of my goals, because I'm like, women, you are amazing. If you just knew how powerful you are, oh my gosh, we could change this world. We can have a baby in us and be a little leech for 9 months, and this beautiful human being comes out. Oh my gosh, how incredible are we? So we have to remember that.
We have to remember that. And I think that when we forget that, we don't always tie it to, what did I eat yesterday? What did I drink yesterday? How much water did I have? Did I really sleep? How was my bowel movement? Is it moving at all? It's just that we don't think, I don't feel good. I'm really down on myself and I'm in a bad mood and I'm depressed. Most people don't immediately go, what did I put in? What did I give my body? What did I consume? What it soaked in? What chemicals? We don't necessarily automatically think that when it's something we feel when it's in our brain. But you and I know the gut is a second brain. And so if we just started there, like, oh, let's see what's happening in our gut, and then come see you, figure out what's going on with our hormones and everything. Like you ask for your new patients to fill out a 3-day diary. Why do you do that?
Because I want to see what they're eating. Most of them say, oh, most of them will say, oh, that was a bad day. And I'm like, you're eating this? Or they think they're eating healthy. And as I dissect it, I'm like, well, that's inflammatory. That's why this is going on. And so I'm able to break it down and see, what do we need to change here? So yeah, food can be, I always say, if you can use food as medicine, or it could be a poison, one or the other. And you have to, and also if you look from an ancestral perspective, it's like, we didn't have access to fruit year long. Sometimes in the winter, they were more carnivores, meaning they were more ate more animal products. And then in the summertime, they had more fruits available and more honey. So they kind of ate more of that. They became more paleo.
Mhm.
So, and with the female cycle, you can integrate the different eating templates. I mean, that's a whole different conversation.
I know, I know. We'll have
So
to do that
I
one.
just
Part
want to
two
leave
will
them at
be-
that. It's a
yeah.
lot.
Our part two will be just all about food and really how to make food your medicine. I love this topic. You're such an incredible amount of knowledge, and you are so easy to explain it to us normies. You break it down so easily, and I really appreciate it because it is a very complex, our bodies are complex.
Mhm.
And you've studied this stuff for years and you've had thousands of patients, and it's hard for us to dissect what is good for us and what's not, because you find both sides everywhere you look. It's
Yeah.
so confusing.
Yes. Yeah.
So thank you so much. This is
Welcome.
amazing. I love it. I could go on for 10 more hours, but we've
I could too. I love it.
so good. We'll have to do a part two. And thank you so much for doing this for me.
Absolutely.
And listeners, anybody listening today, thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you for being here and supporting my show. Linda, how can they find you? Because you need to work with Linda. She's going to get you all set up with the hormones. My appointment's tomorrow. She's going to get me all set up. Tell me how bad my food was for 3 days.
The best place is on my website, drlindamarquez.com. I mean, I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook at drlindamarquez.com. So if you just look that, or if you Google CEO Health Academy, it'll also take you to my website.
Awesome. Do you have any group programs coming up?
Not at this point. We just finished up a 7-day. It was amazing. The women did awesome. Probably within the next couple months, but with our academy, we have like monthly resets. Like we'll focus on a specific eating template for them to really grasp it. A fasting style, we'll do like intermittent fasting together for like, we'll do like a 24-hour fast or a 36-hour fast or a 3-day fast. So when you do it together, it's pretty awesome because it's so much easier because you have a group supporting you. And if someone's like, oh, I'm feeling this way, we encourage one another. And that's the importance of community. We know so much out there, Karen, but we don't do it because we don't have the accountability. And I'm such a believer that no, have somebody hold your hand for a little bit that's gone through that route. They already know, they know the path. All you have is a vision of the path, but you haven't walked the path. Go to work with someone that has walked that path. And that applies to not just your health and business and all areas of life. You have to go with somebody that has walked the path.
It's fantastic advice. Everything you said is fantastic advice. And thank you again so much. Listeners, thank you. God bless you. Thank you for being here. And remember, you can create the life and the health and the body and the fitness and the mind that you've always wanted. Just take it one day at a time and hire a professional. Call Dr. Linda ASAP. All right. God bless you. Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.